Thank you guys all for coming. I have to say, it is incredible to be on this stage talking to you about this journey I was so lucky to go on, because where it all started was also right here. Oh, hey, Jim. I see you in the audience, Dave. Many of you guys, I don't know show of hands, how many of you guys have been to Maker Faire before? And how many of you guys were at Maker Faire like more than 5 years ago? All right, okay, good. So how many of you guys, let's do show of hands again, remember this, the OpenROV kit? Anyone? Yeah. This is where it all started. David, who's in the audience here, and I co-founded this company called OpenROV, and others were members. Jim, I see, John is around. And the idea is we wanted to make these very low-cost robotic submarines that were so low cost that you could build one yourself and explore parts of the world that no one's seen before. And we kind of came up with this kit using laser-cut parts, and we shared the design, and people started building them, and it led me on an amazing journey. I don't have time to talk about all the details of how I got to where I got from that, but a point I'll definitely want to make is that great things start with making. Now let's fast forward to what has just happened. I was on a television show produced by James Cameron called OceanXplorers, and before telling you about it with my own words, we'll just play the trailer and it'll give you a sense of what it's all about. All right. Or will we?
Welcome to the Ocean Explorer.
The ship is incredible. It feels like living in a science fiction movie.
What we're doing here is really pushing the boundaries.
Whale dead ahead!
Whale's coming up!
Tag on! I'd call this a successful mission.
100%! There's absolutely nothing more rewarding than finding answers.
That is really cool.
We've got so much to learn about these species.
Yeah, looks good.
Whoa! Oh my gosh.
We just saw what no one has seen before.
Just unbelievable.
Hammer, hammer, hammer.
I'm so excited to share this with the world.
It doesn't get any more cutting edge than this.
Oh, thank you. So that was a really incredible experience, and it all really happened. And God, I still get kind of like teary-eyed watching it, because I got the privilege of seeing some of the most incredible things that are happening on the majority of our planet that hardly anyone has seen before. And it's all out there. This is our initial crew. There's 4 of us, kind of 4 co-stars. And when they pitched it to me, they said, your job is to be kind of like Q in James Bond, but for ocean gadgets. We want you to be the nerd on this show. And I was like, yes, sign me up. So the 4 of us, you see Aldo Kane there. He's an ex-Royal Marine. He was a commando. Asha, who then later switched spots with someone named Melissa, is a marine scientist, a marine biologist. And then Zaleka Philander at the end from South Africa is a deep sea ecologist. And these are all world-class people. They're incredible. And so just so you know, this show is a collaboration of a lot of all-stars. We've got BBC Studios, who did Blue Planet, and OceanX, who's got the ship and all this technology, and James Cameron, one of the best storytellers in the world, all coming together to make this show for National Geographic, which you can watch on Disney+. And we did 6 episodes. And so we started with filming 2 episodes in the Caribbean. Then we went to the Azores, which a lot of people don't know about because it's hidden under the T in Atlantic. And then we went to the far north into Svalbard, and even farther north than that, we got within 500 miles of the North Pole. So from the tropics to the pole, all in one season. And the experiences I had were incredible. This is one shot of the ship from the Azores as we were looking at sperm whales and coming home from a mission. I took this with my camera phone as we were flying in a helicopter over the boat. And then just a few months later, we were up in the Arctic looking at glaciers receding, and the same ship going to all these places was an incredible experience. Okay, let me just geek out about the ship a little bit. This is like, if I was 7 years old and like drew my like dream research ship, this is what have it all. It has a sub hangar for our 2 crewed submersibles, an instrument, the CTD hangar, a sonar array so we can scan the bottom. There's a helipad and a helicopter hangar. We've got a crane for picking huge things up, and an A-frame that can lift our crewed submersibles into the water. And this is what it looks like. It was awesome. And we even have a tender, like a boat that we launch from the boat. The tender alone is 38 feet long, and you can spend the night on it. So just to give you a sense, I mean, the ship is 280 feet long. It has 72 people aboard. And so, yeah, just a little bit of a list of the cool gadgets that we had for other gadget people like me. It was incredible. It was really incredible. And so, not only that, I feel like I had the coolest job on the entire ship because I had to have like a lab to do all my tinkering. You see this red box where those little windows are. If you look in this photo of the ship, you can kind of see behind, like kind of underneath where that blue crane is in the back. Those are the windows from my office. So most people had, you know, they worked in the bowels of the ship. But I set up this really cool maker lab. You can see the OpenROVs on the right there. I had windows out the side. This is what it'll look like in the TV show with the cool lighting. But actually during the day, it looked more like this. And I would just tinker. And as we were out on an expedition and the mission would change because we realized there's something we don't understand and we don't have the tools, my job was to use my maker skills to make the gadgets that would allow us to explore. And not only did I have the views out the window, we have a sub hangar with 2 crewed submersibles. Each sub holds 3 people. And my other windows looked out at that sub hangar. So while I was tinkering, I could see, like, you know how, I mean, you guys are makers. You know how things end up being last minute? It'd be like, all right, I need 6 minutes to finish this gadget, but they're launching in 7 minutes. Okay, cool, there's time. And so I'd be like running down the stairs and like mounting things onto the side. The accommodations were good. We slept in bunks. A lot of people want to know what the living quarters were, so it was like a little bunk bed. It was pretty neat. We had a mess hall where we'd have some of the best food I've eaten in my life. Great staff. We're all watching some footage we had captured that day. I took this photo of someone else's plate and sent it to my mom because I wouldn't normally have had the salad. But there was also an ice cream drawer on the ship. Okay, sorry, I'm digressing. But it was great, you know, and it really built a lot of camaraderie. When you do missions together, this is us watching Life Aquatic together for a little bit of inspiration. And then even the World Cup soccer match was happening, and we used the sub hangar so that everyone would have enough room to fit, and we watched it. And it was really cool watching this event with these subs that can go down to 3,000 feet right next to us. Lots of safety drills and things like that. You can kind of get a sense. That was in the tropics, and then in the Arctic, we had to have a little bit more substantial safety gear. So we had to train how to get all that stuff on. We'd have a day where we'd be like planning what our mission's gonna be. Even if a thing was broken and the weather was bad and all that, we'd still find ways of making good footage. We'd spend about 2 weeks filming an episode. We'd brief what we want to do downstairs with the producers, and then we'd go up on deck with all the officers and the captain. This is a more serious meeting at 7 p.m. each night, and we'd very carefully like discuss what our plans were. But that was like a no joke, like, you know, you have to have your stuff ready. And that was kind of what it was like. So the next day we'd go out and we'd carry it out our mission, and then rinse and repeat. No weekends. You know, it's busy, but it's amazing. Every part of the ship is meant to be on show. The ship was actually designed for storytelling, not just research. James Cameron and Ray Dalio and the people producing this said, if we're just doing science, it doesn't matter. If we're just doing entertainment, it doesn't matter. This ship has to be able to do both. And so you can see the lighting. It looks like a sci-fi movie, but every single thing on the ship is real. There are no props. And so we'd be looking at things on this really cool table, and it would make for great television. And we'd be able to look in microscopes. And I mean, the ship was personal. James Cameron actually came to the ship and helped design how it would look. And it was neat because it felt like living in a sci-fi movie, you know, but there's no like fourth wall where there's a bunch of camera equipment. Everything you see, you're actually living in the real thing. This is our ROV piloting area where we can drive the ROVs from. It also looks cool, and we do some crazy missions. And then if you really want to get sci-fi, we even had a thing called the HoloLab. And this is what it would look like when we're filming. We wear these Microsoft HoloLenses, and what looks like just a table here to our eyes and to the eyes of the camera in real time looks like this three-dimensional graph of things. So like, here's an example of what that would look like. And so that's not CGI that's done afterward. We would actually be like planning our missions, doing a sonar run, and then like creating this three-dimensional table showing what the topography was, and we'd be zooming in and out and having discussions. It was amazing. We also, if any of you guys are scuba divers, we had a hyperbaric chamber on board, so if someone had decompression sickness, they could put them in this chamber and help potentially save their lives. Nitrox diving and all the cool stuff for scuba diving built into the ship. This is our deep sea ROV that can go to 20,000 feet deep. It can go to most of the world's oceans and see the deepest parts of them. You can see how it's deployed with this cool arm that comes off the side of the ship. You know, and the things we'd see with the ROV were incredible. This is this big swarm of fish that came around. The big ROV, this weighs like the size of a small school bus, it's like way similar to that of a school bus. But they had this smaller robot that could fly out from the bigger robot to be able to, like, you know, go into more difficult things. And if you guys are familiar with an ROV, here's the smaller robot coming out from its bay and a trident on top of that. So I was hoping that we could put a trident on top of the smaller ROV that comes out of the bigger ROV that comes out of the ship. It'd be like this Russian nesting doll thing. No one wanted to do it, but that's all right. We had a helicopter. Oh my God, it was so awesome. This helicopter seats 5 people, and we'd go on these missions. We were looking for whales, you know. It can fit into that helicopter hangar, which opens up on the helideck. And it's a really powerful, capable machine. We'd have this really fancy camera on the front. It's like $1 million camera that'd be able to get these shots of the things we're able to see from the sky. The guy on the right, the older guy, is Gavin Thursam. He's the director of photography for like all of David Attenborough's shows. So it's like world-class team. Getting to work with them was incredible. And this is what it looks like. You know, we're flying. We have a producer who's looking into this thing, trying to get those shots, landing on the deck of a ship in a helicopter. Oh, it was awesome. The subs, okay, I've saved the best for last. So we had these 2 crewed submersibles. They hold 3 people each, Nadir and Neptune. And like, this was, I think, one of the first days on the ship. I couldn't believe it. But these allow you to viscerally see with your own eyes what it's like to be in the deep ocean. I got to go on some dives with these. And we go down to 3,300 feet, 1,000 meters. And you're seeing parts of the world that no one has seen before. Every dive, it's brand new things. And so they roll out on these big carts, and they're lifted by the A-frame on the back of the ship into the water. And the feeling, you know, because you load up in this deck, you saw that sub deck kind of that's inside. You get in there, and then they slowly wheel you out, and you're in this dome, and all these technicians and people are, you know, getting things prepared and running around and talking on radios. And then, you know, you watch them attach this hook, and it lifts you, and it kind of dangles you over the water and lowers you, and the water comes up, and you just keep going down. And then a guy jumps into the water and like releases, and there's all the chaos of that. But then that feeling of like, as you're going, and there's noise and there's waves, and all of a sudden it starts getting deeper and quieter and quieter. And all that chaotic top kind of fades away, and things get more still and more dark. And down you go. You keep going down until the light blues turn to dark blues, and the dark blues turn to black. And then you are in a world that no one has seen before. And you're actually there. This is an acrylic sphere. So you're surrounded by something that has the same index of refraction as water. The sphere is not visible. It seems like there's just a force field, a spherical force field of water. You can't see the glass, so to speak. And it's an incredible feeling. It's hard to describe. I told you about that process of getting into the water, but then once you're down there, and you know, there's all this technical stuff. There's a whole topside team watching where we dive. Sorry, just a bit of an aside because I'm a nerd. The technical capabilities of these subs are incredible. A lot of people are nervous about crewed submersibles because of what happened a few years ago with the Titanic sub. But we've got a whole safety team. These subs are certified. We go through training. This is a little micro rebreather. If there was a fire on board, you could put this thing on. It looks really fashionable, and it would allow you to breathe, even though the air might be not that good. They even have, if we got stuck, we could survive for 4 days. The cushions for the seats, like that you sit on, are actually made with these special chemical blankets. And okay, so if you're stuck in a sub, what are you worried about? You're worried about running out of air, right? Or what the problem really is too much carbon dioxide. So they have these blankets, and when you open them, they have lithium hydroxide, a certain chemical, and it scrubs the CO2 away, and it makes it so you can keep on breathing. But another thing people don't think about is at deep ocean, it's almost freezing. The temperature is just above freezing. So you could also freeze to death. And these are so cleverly designed that not only do they scrub the CO2, that chemical reaction produces precisely the amount of heat to heat the cabin to keep it at a good temperature. So if you bring one of these curtains out per hour, it scrubs the CO2 at the right rate, and it produces heat at the right rate. So really well thought out. Okay, but here's that feeling I was talking about. This is on a descent, and people were like, oh yeah, there's a cliff here. It's like, oh, cliff, there's gonna be like a little hill. I figured underwater is just flat. But we went to the side of this sheer cliff that was 1,500 feet tall, And it kept on going down below where we were. We went to the maximum limit of the sub, 3,000 feet, and then climbed up this completely vertical wall for 1,500 feet, looking at all the creatures and things living on the side. You know, they're all there. And then when we got to the very top, we saw some really incredible stuff. And it felt like being in a James Bond movie. In fact, when I was picturing being in one of these subs, I was like, man, it's gonna be like being in a James Bond movie. I'm gonna bring a tuxedo. And I don't know, I have a things with being wearing tuxedos. And so that's me in the sub. You can see the face of the sub pilot in the back. He wasn't as amused. But I didn't care because I was having the time of my life. And there we are. That's with Melissa Marquez, one of the other scientists. And we're seeing this incredible stuff. So I told you we climbed up this cliff face. And it actually wasn't just a cliff. It was a ridge. And when we got to the top of the ridge, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. I had to take a photo. You see that dark kind of long shape coming from the left? That's this rock that's like overhanging. Like the sub pilot didn't want to. It would have been too dangerous. But we could have piloted the sub under that overhanging rock. And we went along this ridge, and we saw all these really weird creatures. One of my favorite creatures is a red-lip batfish. Honestly, this thing changed my life. It wasn't just because of the cool things we were doing and all that. It was this realization that not only is 72% of the Earth covered in water, if you look at its three-dimensionality, something like 95% of where life can exist on this planet, we've never seen. Think about that. If you thought about like where all life can exist in a house, and you think about like, okay, you and me and all of human existence, we spent our entire life in the coat closet. You know, there's so much more that can be seen, and that really is what inspires me. Now, I think I have enough time. I'm going to go into a few of the things I made, if that's all right with you. If you want to know more about the Ocean Explorer, you can go to this website. Now, I'm going to kind of brush through these sort of quick, but first thing, just who here has heard of a red-lipped batfish? Anyone? One person. All right, if you were to ask a really eccentric artist to draw a picture of a fish, maybe they draw something like this, right? It actually exists. This is a red-lipped batfish. It has red lipstick and facial hair, and it walks across the bottom. It has a huge nose. I say don't go changing for nobody. You got your thing. Okay, so we're at Maker Faire. I'm going to rush through these quick, but here's some things I had to build as my sort of MacGyver role on the ship. So I built this robot. It had a long name, autonomous, controllable, omnidirection. I can't remember what it was, but in short, it was acronym was what it stood for, the name acronym of the robot. They didn't end up using it, but it could drive around and pick things up. Then they were like, can you make a shark fin, a thing that holds onto a shark fin for a tag that doesn't use plastic? So I figured out how to use metal and wood and sandpaper to make these clamps that hold onto the shark fin. Then it started getting harder. We want to shoot tracking darts onto whales from a helicopter, and we have an air cannon that does that. Can you make a thing that holds the air cannon to the helicopter? Okay, easy enough. Now, this looks really nasty, but actually what this is a subdermal thing that goes into the blubber layer of the shark, and it holds the tag in for like a year, so we can or not a shark, for a whale. It holds in for like a year, and then it works its way out kind of like a splinter. Then they're like, okay, we have this prototype of a tag, and it's not working. Can you fix it? And also, we need it tomorrow morning. So, okay, things got a little more complicated. Can you build a tracking tag from parts that we only have on the ship? So I found some railing that you use on a stair rail and cut that into a piece, and we made this pressure test, and we made this tag using an off-the-shelf camera that ends up being featured in episode 2. Cool, this is getting fun. All right, there's this type of shark that sucks food off the bottom, and we want to know its sucking force. Can you do that? Right. So I went to the kitchen and got one of those kitchen scales and pulled out the load cell and made this thing that when the shark sucks, it pulls that, and I can measure the load, and it also had a camera embedded in it. So this is like a little Raspberry Pi, and I put a bunch of epoxy around a Raspberry Pi camera, and then I filled it with silly putty to make it waterproof. And then we mounted that on the front of the sub, and we put a lot of bait around. But none of the sharks ever came. I was bummed. Okay, now we're in the Arctic, and we want to explore the inside of a glacial cave. Right, okay, so some RC equipment. I needed to use some sort of waterproof enclosure, and I thought an ice cream container would be good. The problem is that all of our ice cream containers were filled with ice cream, so I had to solve that problem somehow. But I managed to do that, and I actually even got some backup containers just in case. Ready? And made this thing. It has lights, and we piloted inside of this glacial cave, which would have been way too dangerous to go in person. And then my favorite, this is Edie Witter. She's like a legend to me. She studies bioluminescence, which in my mind means she studies magic. And we wanted to make this strobe thing to see if bioluminescence would flash back when we flash at it, which is a thing that it does, and that worked. And then we noticed this thing called the diel vertical migration, where all these creatures, these little copepods and shrimp and plankton come up from the bottom every night, and then they go back down, and they go up and down every day. And you can't see them with your own eyes. And so I wanted to make this thing where it was like a microscope called a video plankton recorder, an underwater microscope that looks at them in real time. And so I built this whole thing that like shines light at the area of the focal plane of a microscopic camera, and then it strobes. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that making is kind of at the heart of a lot of this. And if you guys are makers, just what you're doing now is going to prepare you for this amazing world. So there's other projects I'm working on and stuff, but let me go to a spot like this to say, no, wait, actually, let's go to this slide. This is where it starts. And I've had an incredible journey. My hope is that all of you who are interested in this sort of thing can start by making, and you never know where it's going to take you. I'm glad I could share this with you guys, and I really appreciate you guys letting me geek out about the experience. Thank you.
We have about 5 minutes for some questions. If people have questions, raise your hand. I'll bring you the microphone, and gotta have some questions. Shirley, come on. Let me see some raised hands.
All right, I see one in the back there.
Oh, I see.
Is that John? Yeah, all right.
Wait for the microphone, please.
Can you just go a little bit deeper on the bioluminescence and the patterns that you were trying to signal to them? And I didn't quite catch. Did they signal back? Did you manage to get something going there?
Okay, so bioluminescence. You guys, show of hands, who has seen bioluminescence with their own eyes? Woo! Pretty cool, right? And for most of you, show of hands again, who saw it as something that when you move the water, it lights up?
Yeah.
Basically the same people. Okay, so here's the cool thing. In the ocean, there's a lot of bioluminescence where it also responds to light. If you flash, it will flash back. And in some ways, it actually seems that if you flash differently, it will flash back differently. Mind-blowing. And so the purpose of this experiment was to see what bioluminescent creatures are down there. With the sub, it's not very easy to, like, you know, in a controlled way, move things around. But we did this flashback experiment where we'd turn the sublights on and off, and we'd close our eyes while they're on to not ruin our night vision, and then open, and we'd look around. And Edie had this idea that actually if we strobe multiple times at a specific frequency and cadence, that she thought a lot more of them would happen. So here I am with Edie Witter, my hero, in this sub. We're descending, we're in the middle of the Azores, we're at 700 meters, like 2,000 feet. It's dark all around us, above us, below us, everywhere we can see, pitch black. We think we're alone. And I had built this strobe that turns on much more fast. It goes on and off quickly. Whereas the subs lights are kind of, they turn on slowly and off. They're incandescent lights. So we do the first few strobes. Strobe 1, we close our eyes. There's a few of them around. Strobe 2, a few more. But then, for some reason, the third strobe goes, and we open our eyes, and all around us, like every 4 inches or so, there was some other creature. And there were not just dots. There were things where light would start in one place and propagate to another, like a siphonophore. There were colors. There were things where the light would kind of change. It blew my mind, not because these things were all there. I mean, that was amazing in itself. But what really got to me and kind of made me think differently about the world that we live on is that it was there all the time. All those creatures were around us, but we just didn't know how to look. And that has really fueled this feeling I have of how I want to spend my life, of creating ways for us to see the world differently, because there's so much there that we just don't know how to look at it yet. And that was the experience for me. Did I answer your question, John? I'm not sure. Yeah.
Did you capture that on the film?
Yeah, so if you look at episode 2, it's my favorite episode. You can watch this on Disney+. It's called OceanXplorers. Episode 2, we're looking at sperm whales, which are diving deep. And then we also look at bioluminescence. And I mean, these are the best cinematographers in the world, but still it doesn't quite capture what it feels like to be immersed in it. Like, we are living in an incredible world. Definitely watch episode 2. Okay, one
We
more
have time
question.
for one or two questions.
Oh yeah, I see in the front here.
Hang on a second. Let's get you the mic.
Oh yeah, I can repeat
The
his
people
question.
online can't hear.
I got it.
Do you still sell those kits, and for how much?
Yeah, so that's I'm stoked that you're curious about that. We don't sell the kits anymore, but the nice thing is that they were open source, and so you can still find a lot of the tips and tricks for how we built them. And there's other people who are building kits and parts. But we didn't know what we were doing when we started this. It only became a kit because we figured it out. What I encourage someone who wants to build an ROV to do is to go out and look at online at what other people are doing and just start trying it. It may not work the first time, but it's actually not too hard to build one of these from scratch, figuring it out on your own. And even here at Maker Faire, there's some kits and ROVs that other people have built. So it's still doable.
One more quick question.
You said something about the chambers. How small were they? Like, were they claustrophobic or?
Oh, you mean in the sub?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's see. There are 3 seats on board, and it's 2 next to each other and 1 kind of in the back, which is where the pilot sits. And so it's kind of like a lounge chair. So picture 2 lounge chairs next to each other, and then the sphere like this. I think some people could feel claustrophobic, but because acrylic kind of becomes invisible in water, it doesn't really feel like you're in a tight spot. It actually feels like you have the whole ocean around you. And so I didn't feel that claustrophobic. And also, I think if you're excited enough about what you're doing, it kind of overrides that feeling. So I'll stick around a little bit if there are any other questions we didn't get to, but thank you guys all once more so much for coming.